So my big question is, how do we restore marine ecosystems? We have a big problem at the moment, and that's that most of the management that we do around managing our marine environment is really only geared up to slow the rate of decline. It's not geared up to fundamentally transform the way we interact with the environment, to actually restore some of the biodiversity within these systems, and to restore the way these ecosystems work and all of the benefits that they provide to us in terms of ecosystem services, ranging from food and oxygen through to just the beauty of our oceans and coastal environments. So the research that's involved with this is really multifaceted. It is very interdisciplinary, and it transcends a lot of challenging fields of research. So first off, we need to understand, how do we actually restore marine species in an active way? We have for a long time been restoring marine systems by trying to stop particular kinds of activity in particular places, and that works to some extent, but it's very slow and it isn't necessarily a fast process. So the question is, can we basically plant out species back into the natural environment, and can those species then restore some of these ecosystem goods and services and the biodiversity that should be in those systems? So as we look at those outplanting of different kinds of organisms, we faced a big challenge. This is like if we were a farmer or a gardener and we knew nothing about the biology of an individual plant or an animal that we wanted to farm, and we were trying to actually farm that organism. So we need to know some basic biology about these species, because in the marine environment we often don't know a lot except for the few species that we currently exploit. And that basic biology is often complicated by, we need to understand the scales over which these animals move and how populations in one part of the ecosystem are connected to another. So we need to understand this concept of connectivity between places. We also need to understand issues around how those organisms actually contribute to ecosystem function, so that we're restoring species that actually have very beneficial effects on the ecosystem. And we need to understand how we do that, what scales are important for actually generating an effect. Can we plant out 4 or 5 individuals, or do we need to plant out 100 square kilometres? So there are some basic biological, ecological questions that sit into that space. Associated with that, though, is the idea that a lot of the declines that have occurred have resulted in a process called hysteresis. Hysteresis occurs when we get these feedbacks that come into systems that essentially stop the natural recovery processes. So that might occur, for instance, around shellfish beds or seagrass beds, where we remove those organisms from the system, and all of a sudden the sediment that was being bound to the seed floor by those organisms is now able to be resuspended by tides and waves, and the water has now become a lot more turbid. And a lot of those kinds of plants and these filter feeding animals, they don't like living in turbid environments. So we can't easily just go and plop a few back onto the seafloor and expect them to grow and be happy and do all the things that we want them to do. We're in a position to understand some of the ecosystem services that are generated by marine systems, not because we want to put a dollar value on it, but because it allows us to have a language that we can use to tell people about how they benefit from often the hidden animals that live in the seafloor and in the water column, that are not the big charismatic poster child species that everybody immediately wants to go up to and hug, but they're the species that are doing something really important in terms of making the whole system work. And it's about the interactions between them and the functions and the processes that become incredibly important. So we are learning more and more about those kinds of things, and all of that learning is telling us that the coastal and estuarine and near shelf systems in particular, and soft sediment environments, are exceedingly important in delivering all those goods and services on a planetary scale as well as on a local scale.